Okay. Chapter 8. The same day King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman. That's a nice way to put it, reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman the Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. Then the king extended the gold scepter to Esther, and she arose and stood before him. If it pleases the king, she said, and if he regards me with favor and thinks it the right thing to do, and if he is pleased with me, let an order be written overruling the dispatches that Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, devised and wrote to destroy the Jews in all the king's provinces. For how can I bear to see disaster fall on my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my family? King Xerxes replied to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, because Haman attacked the Jews, I have given his estate to Esther, and they have impaled him on the pole he set up. Now write another decree in the king's name on behalf of the Jews that seems best to you, and seal it with the king's signet ring, for no document written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can be revoked. At once the royal secretaries were summoned. On the 23rd day of the third month, the month of Sivan, they wrote out all Mordecai's orders to the Jews and to the satraps, governors, and nobles of the provinces, stretching from India to Cush. So satrap was the name of the person who'd be the governor of those individual provinces. So here, once again, the vast extent of the empire we're talking about. Next slide. These orders were written in the script of each province and the language of each people, and also to the Jews in their own script and their own language. Mordecai wrote in the name of King Xerxes, sealed the dispatches with the king's signet ring, and sent them by mounted couriers who rode fast horses, especially bred for the king. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and to protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality or province who might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. The day appointed for the Jews to do all this, in all the provinces of King Xerxes, was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was issued as law to every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers, riding royal horses, went out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. When Mordecai left the king's presence, he was wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold and a purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. For the Jews, it was a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province and in every city to which the edict of the king came, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebrating. And many people of other nationalities became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them. Chapter 9. On the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, the edict commanded by the king was to be carried out. On this day, the enemies of the Jews who had hoped to overpower them, but now the tables were turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in the cities and in all the provinces of King Xerxes to attack those determined to destroy them. No one could stand against them, because the people of all the other nationalities were afraid of them. And all the nobles of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and the king's administrators helped the Jews, because fear of Mordecai had seized them. Mordecai was prominent in the palace. His reputation spread throughout the provinces, and he became more and more powerful. The Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. They also killed Parhadatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Poratha, Adalia, Ardatha, Parmashah, Arisai, Aradai, and Bazetha, the 10 sons of Haman. So if you're looking for names for your kids, that's a good place to. You might want to start right there. The 10 sons of Haman, son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. The number of those killed in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king the same day. The king said to Queen Esther, "The Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men, and the 10 sons of Haman in the citadel of Susa. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your petition? It will be given you. What is your request? It will also be granted." "If it pleases the king," Esther answered, "give the Jews in Susa permission to carry out this day's edict tomorrow also, and let Haman's 10 sons be impaled on the poles." So the king commanded this be done. An edict was issued in Susa, and they impaled the 10 sons of Haman. The Jews in Susa came together on the 14th day of the month of Adar, as they had put to death, and they put to death in Susa 300 men, but did not lay their hands on the plunder. Meanwhile, the remainder of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also assembled to protect themselves and get relief from their enemies. They killed 75,000 of them, but did not lay their hands on the plunder. This happened on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th they rested and made it a day of feasting and joy. The Jews in Susa, however, had assembled on the 13th and 14th, and then on the 14th they rested and made it a day of feasting and joy. That is why rural Jews, those living in the villages, observed the 14th of the month of Adar as a day of joy and feasting, a day for giving presents to each other. Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews throughout the provinces of King Xerxes, near and far, to have them celebrate annually the 14th and 15th days of the month of Adar, as the time when the Jews got relief from their enemies, as the month when their sorrow was turned into joy, and their mourning into a day of celebration. He wrote them to observe the days as days of feasting and joy, and giving presents of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So the Jews agreed to continue the celebration they had begun, doing what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast the pur, that is, the lot, for their ruin and destruction. But when the plot came to the king's attention, he issued written orders that the evil scheme Haman had devised against the Jews should come back onto his own head, and that he and his son should be impaled on poles. Therefore, these days are called Purim, from the word pur. Because of everything written in this letter, and because of what they had seen and what had happened to them, the Jews took it on themselves to establish the custom that they and all their descendants and all who joined them should without fail observe these 2 days every year in the way prescribed and at the time appointed. These days should be remembered and observed in every generation by every family, and in every province and in every city. And these days of Purim should never fail to be celebrated by the Jews, nor should the memory of these days die out among their descendants. So Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, along with Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full authority to confirm this second letter concerning Purim. And Mordecai sent letters to all the Jews in the 127 provinces of Xerxes' kingdom, words of goodwill and assurance, to establish these days of Purim as their designated times, as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had decreed for them, and as they had established for themselves and their descendants in regard to their times of fasting and lamentation. Esther's decree confirmed these regulations about Purim, and it was written down in the records. Doesn't chapter 9 go on a long time? Okay, now we're on chapter 10. King Xerxes imposed tribute throughout the empire to its distant shores, and all his acts of power and might, together with a full account of the greatness of Mordecai, whom the king had promoted, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Media and Persia? Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Xerxes, preeminent among the Jews, and held in high esteem by his many fellow Jews, because he worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of all Jews. So that's a really short chapter. So what have you noticed? That was a long reading, but what have you noticed about the reading we just heard? Anything strike you? There's a lot of killing. There's a lot of killing. Yeah. I'm sorry? They killed people, but they didn't take their stuff. That's kind of fascinating. There was another hand, yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a really interesting, maybe you'd call it parallelism, and it's almost like they're mirror images of each other. Haman is elevated in the first chapter, Mordecai in the last. Exactly right. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Where's the? So this is another feature of this letter. They didn't pray, and God's name is never actually mentioned. It's sort of this is, and it's clearly intentional. And as I think maybe the first book I said, there are other books in the Bible about exile, and there God is prominent, but here it's like always just off stage. Yeah. Anything else you notice? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Mordecai is prominent throughout, trusted. Yeah, it's a very interesting turn of events. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, what Haman was wanting to do to his enemies ended up happening to him. So it's a brutal kind of justice, I guess. Well, let's next slide. So observations. The powerful can be fickle, right? I mean, the king is totally fickle. King loves Haman. Next slide. Until he doesn't. I mean, that's just, I mean, wow. What a turn of events. Next slide. So I like to talk about this guy named Boethius. And you can see he died in 524 AD. So obviously, not quite as long ago as Haman, but a long time ago. Next slide. So Boethius was a scholar who lived in the Ostrogoth kingdom of Theodoric. So this is, by the time you get to the 200s AD, the Roman Empire, they're starting to lose their grip on control over their fate. And the borders get invaded by successive waves of Germanic tribes, etc. And then by the time you get to the 400s, they're really not, they still call it the Roman Empire, but there's very little Roman about it anymore. And by the 500s, there's just successive waves of people invading, and there's a lot of chaos. So Boethius is a scholar living in this Ostrogoth kingdom. It'd be North Italy, would today be North Italy, like Switzerland, Austria, that area. Next slide. And the paranoid king asked Boethius to assume an important role in government, and he said yes. And then, like weeks later, the king just suddenly threw him in prison. And he knew he had about 3 or 4 weeks before he was going to be executed. Next slide. So in prison, he was thinking about his fate, spends a couple weeks being just depressed, and then he decides, I can't just be depressed, and he ends up writing what's one of the greatest books in human history, called The Consolation of Philosophy. Next slide. Chaucer translated it into English, and this book, The Consolation of Philosophy, became the foundation for Dante's Divine Comedy. You probably heard that one. Almost nobody's ever heard of Boethius. I'd never heard of Boethius until I got to grad school. That's what grad school is for, learning stuff that nobody cares about. So the Divine Comedy is based on the structure, the world that Boethius constructs. In the Divine Comedy, which I sort of read maybe, but the whole point of the sort of Divine Comedy is a soul, after this person dies, their soul then is given a tour of hell, purgatory, and heaven. Next slide. And so part of the point of the Divine Comedy is to help us realize that human beings, we foolishly decide to satisfy our basic human desires, and we end up in hell. Because that's what we deserve. Because that's what we've focused on. And we can't escape our basic human desires. It's very hard for us to do that. So, giving in to your basic human desire may seem like a good idea in the moment, but it's really a bad idea long term. Does that make sense? That's the basic idea of the Divine Comedy. Now, getting back to Boethius, so next slide. So the Consolation of Philosophy, in this book, Boethius, as he imagines it, he's in his cell and he's visited by Lady Philosophy, Lady Wisdom, who tells him, you know what? Human beings can control almost nothing that happens to them. I wasn't born in medieval Europe. I wasn't born a woman in Japan, in the year 50 AD or something. I can't control any of that. Next slide. Lady Fortune, Boethius writes, spins her wheel, the wheel of fortune. That's where they get this TV show from that idea. And her gifts, wealth, career, she can grant them and she can arbitrarily take them away. So those are two medieval images of the actual wheel of fortune. And you can be on top, and then 2 weeks later, you're at the bottom. Next slide. So, Boethius says, stop trusting in Lady Fortune. Don't ignore the world, but don't pursue stuff or power or fame. Have a proper perspective. And Boethius says, like Chaucer, take care of your inner citadel with humility, trust in God. So what can we conclude? Well, you know what we ought to expect? We ought to expect the world to be tricksy. We ought to expect it to not be fair. We ought to expect that we're going to get screwed over sometimes. We ought to expect that. Some who are evil or selfish or cannot escape the gravitational pull of their own appetites, you know what? They're going to be rewarded. Some of them will. And some who are honest and kind and moral get punished. So what can we conclude? Well, you know what? We should aim to live a life of principle. Number one, and linked to it, is live a life of dependence on God. Don't let things be your aim. Next slide. The scale of vengeance, holy moly, from India to Kush, thousands of miles. Is our anger, as human beings, is our anger never satisfied? Is our animosity never satisfied? Third observation, the Jews could destroy all who would attack them. Given permission, go annihilate them. Next slide. Not a whole lot of turn the other cheek rhetoric there. There's no absorb evil. The environment in which we live is compromised. Next slide. So I don't know if some of you are old enough to remember. I'm old enough to remember this guy, Václav Havel. When the Soviet Union fell, and he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. He was a poet. And when the Soviet Union fell, and his country, that now would be we called Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, was suddenly free because there was no Soviet Union to push them around anymore. He became the country's president. And being a poet isn't a great background probably to be president. He's an intensely moral person, but it was how would you rebuild a country that had been a slave state to the Soviet Union? But this is what he said when he was inaugurated as president. Next slide. For 40 years on this day, January 1st, you heard from my predecessors variations on the same theme. How our country was flourishing, how many millions of tons of steel we produced, how happy we all were, how we trusted our government, and what bright perspectives were unfolding before us. I assume you did not propose me for this office so that I too would lie to you. Next slide. We live in a contaminated moral environment. We fell morally ill because we got used to saying something different from what we thought. We learned not to believe in anything. We learned to ignore each other, to care only for ourselves. Concepts such as love, friendship, compassion, humility, and forgiveness lost their depth and dimension. When we talk about the contaminated moral atmosphere, I'm speaking about all of us. We had all become used to the totalitarian system and accepted it as an unalterable fact of life. And thus, we helped to perpetuate it. In other words, we are all, though naturally to different extents, responsible for the operation of totalitarian machinery. None of us are just its victims. We're also its co-creators. Wow. Next slide. So, it's a pretty human story, what's going on right now. Hamas attacks Israel. The Israelis respond. Violence begets violence. Next slide. Must it be this way? Next slide. Reciprocating violence. Next slide. Trump lost the election in 2020. Next slide. Remember that? He lost the election, and there was some violence. It was violence. Next slide. The new Biden administration then went after him. Jack Smith went after him. Next slide. Now the hunters are the hunted again. Next slide. It's an adult version of Billy pushed me, Sally kicked me first. Right? Isn't it that? It's as simple as that, right? Consequences way more, but it's still like holy moly. Next slide. Somehow hate must be absorbed if good is to grow. Next slide. Guilt must be recognized and carried. Satan must be removed. sin's power must be broken. Next slide. At the cross, Jesus absorbed hate. Hate got recycled into forgiveness. Next slide. So I think Augustine can help us. Next slide. His City of God is a masterful analysis of the human condition. Next slide. He became a Christian. Augustine then rose to power in the late Roman Empire. He died in 430 AD. Next slide. And he said, the whole world, our world, the world of human flesh and of time, is divided into two great pyramids of loyalty. Those human beings who are loyal to God and those human beings who are loyal to Satan. But the problem is, this world of time and space, of the United States and Argentina and India and China, this is a world in which citizens of the city of God and the city of Satan populated, both of those citizenships populated, and we interact with each other all the time. So the city of God is really it's not a city, it's a population. The human beings who are loyal to God, and the city of Satan are the human beings who are loyal to Satan. And that means this world in which we live in is actually Babylon, which is the word means confusion. Next slide. And we should remember, we are not primarily citizens here. Christians are citizens of heaven. And we are ambassadors here. Next slide. So the world is not our home, but we do live here right now. Next slide. We should understand that dynamic. Next slide. And let us strive to be agents of shalom, peace. Peace is not just the absence of tension. Shalom is, what does it take for good to grow? Next slide. So trust in God no matter how dark the night. Expect trouble, but be an agent for what is right. Be an agent for the grace of God. There is fear all around us. And there's foolish decisions. You can't make this world the city of God. You just can't do it. And the New Testament doesn't ask you to. But let's remember, we are agents of God's grace and peace and love and forgiveness here. Our citizenship is in heaven, and we are God's agents of his will in this world. Amen?